they passed into the east with Corunir. And together this band of 3 wizards plunged deep into lands walked by the elves under the stars in the Elder Days, and by men in later ages. It was in the early Third Age that Alatar, Palando, and Corunir, or Saruman, journeyed together, as Gandalf and Radagast stayed in western Middle-earth, tending to other matters. Alatar served Orome, the Vala, and Palando was his friend, who served Orome as well. And it is likely from Orome that the two received knowledge of the far regions of Middle-earth, and perhaps garnered the skills of adventure and journeying through the wild from the huntsman. Therefore, just as Radagast would protect the nature of Yavanna in Middle-earth, and Gandalf would go forth to inspire others, and Saruman would fall into corruption through knowledge and his pursuit of power, the Blue Wizards would wander and adventure, but this time in western Middle-earth. Indeed, either way, the Blue Wizards went into the east for a purpose, likely seeking out the inhabitants of that land and putting Sauron's plans to rest as best as they could. But, in our theory, around 2463 of the Third Age, the Blue Wizards would return from the east with Saruman, back into the western lands in Middle-earth, and likely they would bring with them more knowledge about Sauron's workings in the east, that his shadow had remained there and he retained some loyalty in that land, and that his presence had intensified during the Watchful Peace. Likely, any accounts and knowledge from the Blue Wizards of the East would give more credence to Gandalf's theory that the shadow which had once laid upon, and eventually would return to, Dol Guldur was indeed Sauron, since the absence from the shadow of Dol Guldur during the Watchful Peace matched the same time of intensification of an evil presence in the East. But Gandalf would not be entirely sure still. For some years to come, I believe the Blue Wizards would have actually acted much like Gandalf in western Middle-earth, not really calling one place home, but continuing to wander and seek new lands and peoples to help combat the darkness around western Middle-earth. Saruman would, like in the canon timeline, become the leader of the White Council, but with more wizards in pursuit of Sauron, he would actually probably be outmaneuvered in preventing an all-out assault upon the Dark Lord and his castle, and Saruman would be forced to act against Sauron sooner. Or, if he still refused to do this, there was still enough power to help Gandalf. Therefore, in 2850 of the Third Age, once Gandalf discovered that indeed the necromancer of Dol Guldur was Sauron, as he had suspected, he would discuss this with the council, and with the additional voices of 2 more wizards, Gandalf would likely convince the council, or again at least enough of its members, to oust Sauron like they did in the books, but 91 years earlier this time. With the additional power of Alatar and Palando, they would have little trouble ousting a weakened Sauron from Mirkwood, which would, of course, clear the way for Thorin's company, but this time at a much earlier time, allowing for Gandalf to aid them even more than he did in the canonical events of The Hobbit, while the Blue Wizards continued to wander the lands of Middle-earth, helping people and searching for Sauron in places like Rhûn or Harad, bordering the far east. Perhaps, with their aid, even Gondor would have been better prepared for the trials to come when Sauron inevitably returned to Mordor, which he would likely do earlier than he did in the canon in 2951 of the Third Age. All while this was occurring, however, there were no champions of the Free Peoples in the Far East to stem the tide of Sauron's corruption of the Easterlings and other factions of men, allowing them to grow far greater in anticipation for the War of the Ring to come. However, back in the western lands of Middle-earth, the Blue Wizards would likely keep the Astari in better communication, wandering between the lands where Gandalf could be found, Saruman at Isengard, and Radagast at Rhusgobel. Then there would have also been greater oversight on the potential treachery of Saruman, but I still do not believe the West could have really known of his treachery much earlier than they did, as he would manipulate the Blue Wizards, sending them far from his tower on missions of little import, and in places far from the Gladden Fields where he searched for the One Ring. But when at last Saruman betrayed the Free Peoples, capturing Gandalf, and Sauron launched his assaults on Gondor and led forth the Ringwraiths to search for the ring, the West would have a great deal more power during the War of the Ring in 3018 through 3019 than they did in the canon timeline. For Alatar and Palando would stay true to their friends in the White Council, even if Saruman did not. Therefore, I believe Alatar and Palando might have even attended to Rohan and Gondor directly, aiding them in the plights against Saruman and Sauron, and allowing for Gandalf the Grey, and then Gandalf the White when he returned, to focus more on providing aid to the Ringbearer. But I still believe that after the death of Gandalf the Grey, the Fellowship of the Ring would splinter, and Frodo and Sam would go off by themselves to eventually find Gollum, and with the return of Gandalf the White, Rohan would have stopped Sauron's conquest and held him as a traitor. However, Gondor is where things would go terribly, terribly wrong. Up to this point, most of the things that the West would have gotten from the aid of the Blue Wizards have been good things, but the trade-off would be that the Easterlings and other forces of Sauron in the Far East would have been unmarked and unchallenged for many, many years, and any unknown friends of the West that were gathered by the Blue Wizards would not have come together, and any battles fought against Sauron in such lands that go undiscussed in the lore currently would not have occurred. Therefore, while the Blue Wizards would have aided the West much throughout the Third Age, being in the West, things would have quickly changed. And so, at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, I believe this would have been enough to tip the scales in favor of the forces of Sauron, the absolute bolstering of his forces from the east. For while the Blue Wizards provided more strength in the West, they would have actually provided far more of an advantage against Sauron in the right places, which were likely in the east. And so, with a vast Easterling army, which greatly outnumbered the army of the West, Minas Tirith would surely have fallen. This also means that Frodo and Sam could not have made it to Mount Doom, for there would have been no Battle of the Black Gate, and surely they would have been captured by the minions of Sauron in the attempt to cross Mordor. The Great Wizards would also be captured, tortured, and slain by the Dark Lord, who is reunited with his ring, and his forces from the east surely would have dominated those of the already war-torn West. Now, I must caveat this theory with the fact that we do not know exactly what the Blue Wizards did in the East in the canon. However, in the creation of this theory, I've developed upon the idea that Tolkien set in some of his later writings and some of his latest thoughts on the matter, as found in the Peoples of Middle-earth, which states that he believed the actions of the Blue Wizards actually prevented the East from outnumbering the West. Yet there were also other changes in this idea, such as the Blue Wizards actually arriving in Middle-earth in the Second Age, so take from that what you will. But overall, my concern and belief in this video is around the idea that the actions of the Blue Wizards actually aided in the fall of Sauron in many ways that are generally unknown, but to the effect that the armies of the East were smaller than they might have been if not for their actions. However, if we make the assumption that the Blue Wizards actually fell into corruption in the canon and actually aided Sauron, if they had come back from the East, we might believe that they would not have fallen to evil and would have rather aided the West in the defeat of Sauron, or that they would have fallen such as Saruman did, and rather than fighting against one rogue wizard, it might have been 3. Due to the mysterious nature of the wizards, we will never know for sure, which makes this theory quite a bit more speculative than even my other theories, but I must say that I believe they did aid in the fall of Sauron by limiting the power of the East, and they were worth far more there than what good they could have brought by staying in the West, and it was only through their unknown actions that the West even had victory. But let me know what you all think about this theory. Would it have happened like this or some other way? And so, my friends, we come to the end of our tale on what if the Blue Wizards returned to Western Middle-earth. From this tale, we must remember to not be hasty, for there are many forces at work in this world, many of which we cannot see. Therefore, we must appreciate all good things in life, for such things come by the hands of many, seen and unseen. Hey everyone, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this theory video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on this theory? Let me know in the comments below. As I have remarked before, I really appreciate the enigmatic nature of the Blue Wizards, and more so if they did actually contribute in unknown ways to the victories that we see in The Lord of the Rings, such as the ones at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields or the Battle of the Black Gate. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or order some Weta or United Cutlery Lord of the Rings swords, statues, and other replicas from Castle Kon, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout. And please check out our merch and Patreon. Thank you so much to our Valor Tier patrons and YouTube members: Peter Shepard, Jonathan Putnam, Molly Sullivan, Blair Scouten, Merton, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Sabach, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Anna Petrolik, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur Merlin, Dale Davis, Kingswald Project, Robert Bogan, King of Games 2500. Thank you so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. And I'll see you all again on Sunday with a video on how I would do a TV show set in the First Age. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.